Testes, 1, 2, 3. Testes, 1, 2,
We good?
3.
We good? We're all good?
Here,
Right
and
on.
we're about to go live.
No, we need to know that
So we
because
can start by having.
And we are
All right. Good day, everybody.
hello. It's Scott Baranek and Nate Kapa from Bremer Prosthetics.
Yeah.
I guess this is our first Ask Me Anything opportunity for you to join us here and talk to a prosthetist, ask any questions. It's pretty much an open forum. So
Yeah, we look forward to hearing what you have to ask. And also, I mean, if anybody has, if anybody asks us questions, I mean, obviously we're going to be happy to give our professional clinical opinion. But if anybody else has anything that they'd like to chime in, or things that you've done or answers to the questions, please, we'll keep this as open a forum as we can.
yeah, that's a great idea. So that way, maybe something from more personal experience that you want to share that you've had experience with.
Right.
I mean, I think anyone who's tuned in and done anything with us before via Step Up, we always talk about adaptation and how important that is and what that process is like in prosthetics. So all input would be useful.
Right, exactly. So with that being said, does anybody want to be the first one to ask a question?
ask them to unmute themselves.
Oh, yeah. So yeah, if anybody would like to, you can either raise your hand or unmute yourself, or just hop right in.
Should we start off by maybe having everyone do introductions or something, maybe?
Yeah.
Maybe let's go around, we'll do introductions and then we'll just start taking people for their questions. So Brianna, can you guys handle that on your end? Where you?
Actually, yeah. So what we would begin with, it looks like Jennifer just unmuted herself. Or hey, Jennifer,
ML.
do you?
Unmuted.
Oh wait,
Oh.
ML. Wait, ML. Do you want to share yourself first? Who you are and where you're from?
Are you guys starting from the bottom or?
Well, I think they just saw that this is unmuted.
Is Jennifer running around the building?
Yeah.
Oh,
Maybe try someone else.
Hi, guys.
She's talking.
right. She's talking.
Yeah.
How are
We're
y'all?
trying to figure out. We can see you trying to talk. We're trying to make sure we can get our technical things all in order here.
Okay. All right,
Sorry.
you can talk now. Thank you. Sorry about that.
No, it was probably me. I was at a doctor's appointment.
So- Yeah. So I'm not sure what your name was, but the initials
M.
ML. I think you're unmuted. Can you try to introduce yourself and we can see if we can hear you?
That might be me. My name is Mary Lou. Can you hear me?
Volume's up.
Abby's shaking her head like she could hear.
Abby, can you hear her?
Oh yeah, she's talking.
I can hear you.
Yep, her name's Mary Lou.
Yeah.
She's talking.
Yes.
Mary Lou, okay.
Yes.
We're still working out a few things.
We got it.
Okay, we got you now. If you could start over. Sorry about that.
Oh, so
Sure,
they're going to
that's
tell us what the
okay.
question. Okay.
So my name is Mary Lou, and I'm calling because my sister Nancy, who I'm extremely close to, is very ill and is preparing to get a left above the knee amputation. And I am trying to prepare myself to help her because mentally it's just been a horrible thing. And I feel like her care has been kind of piecemealed. She's seen a lot of different doctors, a lot of specialists, but nobody has really sat down to prepare us, what to expect. And, I actually did call it a prosthetist who gave me a lot of good information, but I'm wondering if the process is different or the same for a lot of people. She's having a hard time making the decision to make that appointment to go in and have her leg amputated. And, I went to the library to look for some books. I didn't find a lot. I didn't know if you all take a multidisciplinary approach, if there's a therapist, a psych counselor that you guys recommend, if you do that in part of your rehab. How do people navigate this situation?
Well, you have a lot of good questions in there. I can tell you've been doing some research. We're going to spend some time on this topic because this is a big one. And I know you haven't been with us before, but something you'll hear us say quite often, and we always repeat this to kind of show the emphasis of what you're dealing with and why it's so hard to get information. Amputees are less than 1% of the population. And there's all kinds of reasons people that could have their limbs amputated. So the information is quite sporadic, and it can be all over the place. You could be talking to a doctor who might say, or another prosthetist or physical therapist who would say something as simple as like, oh, well, technology's come a long way, so you're going to do great, to something is like, oh, you're above the knee amputee. I wouldn't plan on, like it making it sound real negative. So what we do as prosthetic specialists is we focus as much on the language that we do in speaking with and trying to prepare people for what to expect during the process as we do the technical and the clinical application. So hopefully we can be helpful. Nate, you looked like you were going to.
Right. I mean, there are some resources out there in terms of, booklets and pamphlets and things like that, explain what to expect through the rehabilitation process, all that stuff, but they're cold and clinical, right? There's not a whole lot of personal kind of thing. I strongly suggest, being in the situation that she's in, is trying to find a prosthetist that she can actually go meet with, and actually go face to face while she's trying to gather information and trying to make a decision like this. Go talk to somebody, go into their office, see things firsthand and put your hands on them, see what this is going to be like. Find that can be really helpful for people that are maybe faced with a decision of whether to choose an amputation or, to continue to try other treatments that may or may not be successful.
Right. In most prosthetic clinics, I would assume, I don't know what state you're in, but if you have access, they would have maybe a few amputees that would be available who would be willing to want to consult with your sister and try to get, even her speaking with a prosthetist is good, but maybe make an arrangement for her to speak with another amputee is even bigger, because going back to that less than 1%, oftentimes we feel like we're on an island, because most times when you're talking to someone who's facing an amputation, they've never even met with or spoke with anyone firsthand who's actually lived their life with a prosthetic limb, or maybe they did and they didn't even get a prosthesis, or they didn't have success with the prosthesis. So if it was 30, 40 years ago, it could have been a bad experience. So, that talking to other amputees can be very helpful and useful. That's why we mentioned we have other people here who are going to be amputees, and if they want to chime in and they have some advice, that's a very good resource to try to get some information as well. So can I ask you, what is the reason for the amputation? Like you said that she's prolonging making the decision. Does she have an infection at this time, or
she's been a severe diabetic, severe peripheral vascular disease. Unfortunately, it has impacted all of her extremities. She had her right arm revascularized at the Cleveland Clinic. We live in Ohio 5 years ago, but she's lost toes on her right leg. Her right leg is impaired. It's the left leg now. She's had dry gangrene that's converted to wet gangrene. She's had toes amputated, and they tried to do a salvage procedure to restore circulation to her leg, and it failed. And she's been told she needs an above the knee amputation. And, the surgeon said, she asked, well, when do I have to have this done? And he said, well, when you can't stand it anymore. But there is a window between where she's at now till the time that she gets septic. And unfortunately, like I said, all of her limbs are affected, even her left arm now. So, that is why she's really kind of different from maybe other people, because it's a whole general body kind of thing. And I know she's been despondent and has talked about doing nothing and ending her life. And that's why I'm trying to get as much information as I can. I don't know. The prosthetist that I talked to said, based on what I told him, because her other leg is impacted and her arms, that he didn't think that she would be a candidate for a prosthesis. And it's so overwhelming.
So what I want to do, Mary Lou, is just take a second to reinforce what you're doing, because obviously, you're taking the time to show support for your sister, and, going out and trying to find information and doing all those things. And I mean, that's the number one thing that you can do and to continue to do for her as she's going through this is, be that person for her that continues to try to help her as she's going through this. So I want to give you some kudos for being here. It does mean a lot. It does mean a lot because I can only imagine how much support she needs. So you going out of your way to do that, that's big. That's real big.
Thank you. I wish I could just go through it for her, to be honest, because it's just the worst thing ever. I feel like, and I feel like I'm a nurse and she's a nurse, and I feel like I've always been a cup is half empty kind of person, just because of the situations that I've seen in my life as a nurse. And I'm trying to become a cup is half full kind of person. But like I said, without the resources and, what to expect in terms of healing. And have you all seen anybody that has a left above the knee amputation that could have a prosthesis?
Yes, all the time.
All the time.
All
And
the
most
time.
of our patients they have vascular complications as the result of diabetes. 80% of the amputee population is diabetic, and they lose their limbs because of infection as a result of vascular complications. When you're talking to the surgical team and the doctors, because you said a few things that I wanted to kind of circle back to, but you said that she's waiting to make the decision. You said you were advised to wait until she can't. What was that? Till she can't take it anymore, or she goes
Right.
septic?
That's what the surgeon said. She's like, well, when does this happen? And he said, when you can't take it anymore. And I think it's because she's having a hard time making that decision. Now she has some tests scheduled in 2 weeks, a CAT scan and some kind of a oxygen flow thing to see how far the circulation goes to her leg, so they can determine the level of the amputation. But the doctor, the one surgeon told her he thought it would be a transfemoral amputation because there was so little flow. Like he had said, they had tried to save the knee, but he didn't think that they could save that knee.
Well, that was one of the things that I was going to say. I mean, you really want to aggressively, if you're going to be talking to other surgeons, and I'm not saying that you have to, but if I was, second opinions are second opinions. What I would look for, is there a way possible to save the knee? The emphasis of that would be a priority. If I was in that situation, she's still trying to make a decision because it hasn't been done yet. Secondly, I just want to emphasize that if she's got an active gangrene infection, the longer she waits, that's spreading. And, that's going to lead to not only the window where maybe here's the thing. If you can try a surgery to save the knee and it doesn't go and you do a revisional surgery again, you can always go back and have a second surgery, but once that knee's gone, it's gone. So if somebody tells you there's a shot, because we do these kind of consultations all the time, and Nate, I want you to, you agree with me? I'm sure. Then if somebody's willing to take a chance, I say take the chance. And I'm just kind of reiterating this information to you. Of course, it's our opinion, but you guys are trying to make decisions. And secondly, try to get this information sooner than later, because that is going to be part of that process. And here's the thing you need to understand: the longer her residual limb is, if she is a transfemoral amputee, the better chance she has for success. So even if it isn't above the knee amputation, that limb's going to be shorter and shorter the longer you wait to make that decision, which is going to highly impact her probability for success. So I'm just the part that concerned me was where you said they're kind of, I don't know, I think this is more time sensitive. And again, I'm not the doctor, but these are the questions I would be asking when you're talking to the surgical team and you're a nurse. So I'm sure I know you're familiar with what I'm talking about. So, and maybe you've already been through all that and you're comfortable with that answer, but I just did want to say that in case that might be something that you would look at that a little differently and ask some other questions.
Right. And I want to kind of circle back, because you said you talked to the prosthetist who had some concerns about her potential for being a candidate. I mean, and that could be a real thing, right? I mean, we shouldn't take that off the table completely, but until she's gone through a surgery and her body is healed and recovered. I mean, I've met a lot of people that when they're very sick, they look like they're in a weakened state, or they are in a weakened state.
Yes.
And they look like there's somebody that wouldn't be able to use a prosthesis at all. You fast forward 5-6 months, well, now their body's no longer using all of its energy to fight that infection. a lot of just overall health can be recovered, and people can that you may have thought, wow, this person won't be able to walk, this person might not have a chance. They can put a prosthesis on and go about their day. So that's one facet of it. But then the other facet of it is, I mean, we're obviously advocates for a prosthesis and for, amputees, empowering people that have lost a limb and all those things. But some of that empowerment can also happen in a wheelchair. For some people, mobility inside of a wheelchair is still a level of success. So I don't want her to be hyper focused on one thing. I mean, quality of life is quality of life, right?
Mhm.
Right.
Mhm.
I mean, so
Yes.
and that's the thing is, number one is her body, she's using everything in her body, in her power to fight off gangrene right now. That just affects your disposition. It affects everything so much that just by eliminating that, now there's the potential to regain control of your life and to do those things, whether it be through walking, whether it be through being mobile in a wheelchair, whatever that may be. There's still so much potential on the other side.
We see too often. I mean, again, you don't want to set her up for false hope and say everything's going to be great because somebody did say that. But you were talking earlier about you need to be a glasses half full person right now. We can't focus on these things. We have to hope and work towards the positive instead of, because this is still ongoing. And Nate and I will talk often about, when we meet people and they have the amputations, the surgical team, they're usually done within a couple months once they take the sutures out and it's healed. And then the physical therapist, they'll work with them for 3 to 4 months. And oftentimes, these people will say, oh, we don't see a lot of success rate with prosthetic limbs. Well, that's because the one constant that's working with them, if you're, treating these people, we're the advocates for them, because I've worked with vascular surgeons who will say, oh, well, a lot of my patients don't have a lot of success. And it's like, well, and he's referring patients to me. I'm like, well, they're not going and seeing him for follow-ups, even by the time they're being fit with the prosthetic limbs. That's why I mentioned earlier, the information you're going to get on amputees is going to be so inconsistent and all over the place. So what Nate said, it's not, like I said, it's too early to make that determination, because once she's healthy, we see people do a complete 180, and that's not just sometimes, it's all the time. She's sick and she's going through a lot of things. And when she comes out the other side, then she's going to start to recover and you have a better idea what you're really dealing with. So you still need to stay optimistic no matter what people say, fight for, ask the right questions to different doctors and things, because everyone is different and people will surprise you once they get healthy. And if they've got the will, like I said, we've just seen all kinds of success stories. So,
Hey,
Well,
Scott,
thank you.
is that lady's name Mary? Is that her name?
Mary Lou.
Mary Lou.
Mary Lou. My name is Jennifer, and I had an infection. Of course, mine was not as bad as your sister's, but I had an infection in my foot as well. And they told me my chances were going to get, like Scott was saying, my chances were going to get higher of losing my knee if I didn't get it done when I did. And I was trying to make the choice. Should I not? Should I not? But I had struggled so much with infection over and over and over again. And finally, when I made the choice to have the amputation, my life has been, yes, it's hard. I'm not going to say that it's not hard, but I've made adjustments and I am so much healthier now. So I'm just saying that I hope that helps too.
Thank you. It does. It does.
I'm a nurse as well. So us nurses can stick together.
Well, that's
And Mary
the
Lou,
other thing.
please.
When you talk about getting a second opinion, we don't know who to go to, like who is good and who isn't. Do you go to a vascular doctor? Do you go to an orthopedic doctor?
you want a vascular surgeon. With your particular case that you're dealing with, you need a vascular surgeon, because that's wound care, that's the infection.
The blood flow is a big part of
That's
the
everything.
healing process, the whole thing. So in this case, vascular would be the direction to go.
So we live in Ohio and Cincinnati, and we talked about where do we go for a second opinion? Cleveland Clinic, Ohio State. Does anybody have any thoughts on that?
The house.
I have some patients even here from Michigan that have gone down to Cleveland Clinic and had very good success. So
Okay.
I don't personally know the doctors there. I mean, it's outside of our realm, but I do work with people that have left our area for second opinions at Cleveland Clinic and been very happy with what, you know, and not just happy with what they were told, happy with the results of the procedures that they had. And one woman, she was facing a bilateral amputation, an amputation of her second leg. And when she went, the doctors around here said that that's the only option for her. She went to Cleveland Clinic and they were able to save. She lost toes on her other foot, but she only lost the toes, and that's been 4 to 5 years ago. So this isn't like a short-term thing. This has been some long-term success with that now. So I do. It's fairly a small sample size and it's anecdotal, but I have a good. I would say good things about Cleveland Clinic.
So if you call to try to schedule an appointment, you need to emphasize that it's time sensitive. She has the active gangrene. You know, they might say, well, we're booked out for a month or 6 weeks, but we can put you on a wait list so that if somebody cancels, and usually somebody will cancel and they'll just call you and get you in. But and I'm sure you're handling this every day, so you know that, but just let them know the full situation. And they might even have a wound clinic that they could send you to get her in quicker or something. I mean, there are a lot of things they're dealing with are time sensitive, so they're used to this.
All right. Thank you.
Yep. Good luck.
And also don't hesitate to circle back to us through Facebook or through other, email or however. We'd be happy to continue to be a resource for you and answer any questions that you have.
I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
Well, good luck.
Yeah, thank you for coming.
Thank you. Mm-hmm.
Okay, who do we want to have?
Do we go with Robin at the top there?
Sure.
Just kind of work out.
Hi.
Hi,
I'm Robin, and I'm from Roseburg, Oregon. I am do we lose ML? Because I wanted to talk to her. I've been a diabetic for 55 years, and last year I lost my left leg above the knee, and I was in the situation as your sister. I mean, the pain was so severe, I was thinking about taking my life. Couldn't live with that pain, and I had gone to a vascular surgeon many times. He did a lot of stuff, a bypass. I ended up having a fasciotomy, which that wasn't any fun. And he had said to me, well, if it gets too bad, we could take your leg and we could try below the knee, but we might have to go in and do above the knee. And I thought, I don't want to go through. I've been in the hospital so many times. I called him one day and I said, I can't live with the pain. 2 days later, he took off my leg and it was above the knee. So I've been dealing with that. I have a prosthesis, which I'm having a very difficult time walking in. I try to use it every day. I'm just wondering, I know everybody's different, but I'm just wondering, how long does it take before it's comfortable and when you can, start walking with it? So
I guess I would start by asking a couple of questions. And my first question is, do you have regular appointments with your prosthetist? Do you see your prosthetist often?
Yes, but I usually have to always initiate it.
And how often is that? When you say often, how often is that?
Well, in the beginning, it was probably once a week.
Okay.
And now it's, and they the prosthetist keeps on leaving. I live in a very rural area in Oregon, so we only have 2 places I can go to. And the first guy, he was really great. I really liked him, but he moved to Maine. And so then they brought in this girl who I didn't really like her very well, but it's like, well, I don't have much of a choice. And now I just found out today she's leaving. And, it's in the middle of getting my second socket, trying to get Rio knee, I think it's called. I don't know. And she's gone. So, I just feel like somebody stick around till I can learn to walk pretty well,
Right.
So, but they keep on leaving.
I just want to emphasize, the technology and the knees and those things, that stuff is great. And I mean, it's important. It's an important part of it. But that socket, the comfort of the socket that goes around your body, until that is right, the knees aren't going to be the answer for what you're looking for. You know, what you really, the thing that you really need is that socket that's
Right.
fit, that's
I-
really,
An intimate fitting socket
Right.
that's gonna
I ag-
not allow it to rotate.
Yeah, I
and-
agree. What they keep on doing is they keep on sticking pads in the socket. I mean, that's their, is
So
that what you
I'm
guys
assuming
do?
You have your preparatory prosthesis right now, and that is the challenge.
Yes.
So I'm going to circle back to what you said at the beginning. You said you wanted to know how long before this gets comfortable. How long did she say she's wearing the prosthesis?
she said she's putting it on every day.
No, I mean,
Oh,
like how long
I-
have you been wearing how long have you been wearing the prosthetic? limb?
Well, I got it Christmas, but I couldn't wear it because my leg was still so sore. So actually,
Sure.
I've been wearing it for probably on kind of a regular basis, although I take it off a lot, for probably 3 or 4 months now.
So you're very early into
Right.
this process. I
Right.
mean,
Yeah.
it's even, I don't want to say, I don't know your case, so I'm not going to say too early to beginning the definitive prosthetic limb, but
Yeah.
we talked earlier about how we think language and the consistency of language is so important. So we, coin certain things, like we talked about the amputees being less than 1% of the population. Another big one is we say it takes 2 years to maximize what you can do on a prosthetic limb. Now, that's not
Really?
2 years from the surgical date. See, and now
Yeah.
and having an understanding of what you're dealing with, because too often times people, they don't hear certain things, and then you just said really right away, but they think, okay, I must not be doing well. Right now, you are so early in the process. You haven't even really started to adapt to your limb. You're talking about the buildups and the pads. At this point, you can expect that your limb is going to be going through a lot of changes and doing buildups and adjustments to the socket just to keep that fitting. That is normal. Okay, that your limb
Okay.
is still shaping. You've got muscles that are atrophying, which means they're shrinking because you're not using them. You're losing fluid.
Yeah, they're just
You know,
and they're turning into fat. It just seems like it's just a big
But
ball
that's
of
not,
fat
so
there.
that's not a bad thing. That's
Right.
good actually, because when you first had your amputation, your limb, not kind of like a water balloon, everything was really hard, right? So when
Yeah.
you lose that extra edema and fluid and that skin becomes more flabby, like you're saying, that's actually better because that's the way
Right.
your limb is shaping. You really want it to be more like that, but this is a process. This
Right.
isn't anything that happens in a month or a few weeks. So when we say it takes 2 years to maximize what you can do on the prosthetic limb, the first year is really just shaping your limb and strength training. Okay.
Okay.
So, and that's an ongoing process throughout that whole year. What happens in the second year, that's really when you start to adapt to things and you start to react to your environment, and you're not so conscious of, you start to gain confidence on the prosthesis and all those other things. And the reason that happens more the second year is because while your limb's still changing so rapidly and you're building up your strength, right now things are so inconsistent. And the
Yeah.
reason we think it's so important, everybody speaks the same language, because oftentimes if somebody says, like the example I used earlier, that, technology's gone a long way, so you're going to stand up on your prosthesis and you're going to do great, and you're standing there and you go, what? The first time you stand on a prosthetic limb, you don't know what to think about it. Am I right?
Right.
It's different. You're experiencing something that you've never experienced before. You're bearing weight on a part of your body that was not designed to bear weight. And then what happens when people get this, technology's coming, and the first thing they start to think is, this is not for me. This isn't going to work. If the rest of my life is going to feel like this, that's not a very comfortable feeling. That's why we try to prepare you, like, if you continue to wear it, if you continue to labor through some of the difficulties like donning it, sitting in an above the knee prosthetic limb, what happens is eventually you start to get used to that contact, and then you adapt to it, and then it will become more second nature. It's just not going to happen overnight.
Okay. I guess I want it to happen overnight, only because
Right.
before they
Well,
took off the
understandable.
leg, I was in such pain for 2 years prior. So like I'm
Mhm.
going now into like my 3rd year, but I'm only in a few months. But I've been in pain for so long. It's like, well, when is this going to happen? Where at least it doesn't hurt. ML, for your sister, boy, when I couldn't believe when I woke up from anesthesia after they'd taken off my leg, that pain was gone. That horrible, like I want to die pain. It was
Mhm.
a relief. I was so glad the leg was gone. But now I'm dealing with, now I want to go running down the beach and I
Right.
can't.
So Robin,
Okay.
the thing that you answered that you're doing right and that your process is doing right is that you're seeing each other regularly.
Yep.
So that is, I mean, your number one pathway to getting this and being successful and getting to the places that you want to be is continuing to maintain this communication, continuing to maintain these regular appointments like this. Even if you have to be the one to initiate it, just keep initiating, just keep going in. I mean, at the stage that you're in right now, you know, somewhere between weekly and monthly appointments is, when you're having problems especially, is not unheard of or even outside of the realm of what should be expected.
Okay, that's good to know.
That shouldn't be atypical. That's about the frequency. Now, during the good times, maybe you could go a little bit longer, you know, if all of a sudden things have stabilized a little bit, the shape of the sockets matching your body, those things, great. Now it's time for you to go enjoy, but just realize that it's still, even in this, it's still a phase. There's still going to be that next time that your limb is going to change. There's still going to be more work to be done on the socket to really keep it fitting right, because your body's changing so much.
Well, I'm glad to hear that from you, because I'm going through physical therapy also. And I asked my physical therapist, I said, how do you think I'm doing? And in my head, I'm doing okay. He goes, well, no, you know, you should be further along than you are. It's like, oh, well.
Based on what though? I mean, that's, you
Yeah.
know, I mean, you got to ask questions like that. Okay, if you're going to say, and sometimes, and again, I'm just going to be frank, like we were earlier. I'll use physical therapy as an example. I mean, you may have a prosthetist. I mean, if you have a physical therapist who specializes with amputees, then you're in a good situation. If you're at a clinic where you got to think, if amputees are less than 1% of the population, there's a lot more rotator cuffs and back issues. You see so they're seeing a lot more than that than they are amputees. Clinics that have physical therapists that specialize with amputees, they may only have a handful of amputees at a time, but that person's working with all of them, so they're continuing to get that experience. So
I don't think he has much experience with an amputee, honestly. I think I might be the first one he's seen.
And often, and the reason I said that is, and you can ask these questions and find out, but all too often that's the case. So he doesn't know how to verbalize what he expects from you. And if he doesn't work with amputees enough to know that it takes 2 years to maximize what you can do on a prosthetic limb, he doesn't even understand where you should actually be at. Yeah. Unfortunately, what we see with physical therapy too often, you probably have insurance that has you limited where you'll get less than 3 months of physical therapy. So what we often see, and I don't want anyone to get the interpretation, we're not negatively talking about physical therapists, because in our clinics that we work with physical therapists to help everyone get the understanding. And a lot of this information that I'm sharing with you, we've had other physical therapists say to us, and it's this one in particular that resonated with me. We're talking about doing core training with the strength training and some of these other things. And physical therapists would say, we would love to do that, but we don't have these people long enough to where we can barely get them up to a functional level, which means walking with an assistive device before they have to discharge you. So they don't get to work on it's not that they don't know how to do, they're better trained to do that than we are, though, but they still are working on strength training and balance by the time they have to discharge you. Another thing that we've done in our clinics is to get people to realize there are times that you qualify for more residual therapy. Like every year, so sometimes they'll be discharged from physical therapy and they say, oh, well, I'm done, I can't go back. No, the second year, if it takes 2 years to maximize what you can do on the prosthetic limb, then that second year would be very beneficial. Right. To go back for more therapy, but people just think they're discharged, so they're done. The reason we did our clinics is because we've said, unfortunately, what happens if it takes 2 years to maximize what you can do on the prosthetic limb, and people are getting 2 to 3 months worth of physical therapy, what happens and why are the majority of amputees K2 amputees, which we don't have in our clinics? We had different results and we wanted the answers because the patients plateau where therapy stops. So we created the clinics and stuff that we do to try to keep people in an umbrella where they're getting residual therapy whenever they need it. And that's the success to maximizing what you can do on a prosthetic limb, which is what we're all talking about.
So Robin, the other thing I wanted to mention is that, you said that unfortunately being in a rural place that you have limited access to who you have the ability to work with. And that, your caregiver keeps changing, the person, your professional keeps changing. So it's hard to develop a rapport and things like that, which that does make it harder to develop communication, because developing that communication between yourself and your prosthetist is going to be a very important part, so that when you're trying to describe the sensation that you're feeling, you're talking to somebody that has some way of understanding how you're describing it, because every person is going to describe things a little differently, right?
Mhm.
It's just going to be, so the idea is, you know, and I don't know, you know, we're in Michigan and rural means something to us, and I don't know what that means in Oregon, you know, what rural means there. But I mean, we have several patients that travel 4 to 6 hours to come to our clinics to see us. So what
Because they've established trust.
because they've established trust, because they know that we can have that communication, that we can get more done in one appointment than maybe somebody else can in others for their cases. So what I was just, my suggestion only was that if you continue to be unhappy, don't be afraid to expand your bubble. And look maybe outside of just your area and see if there is some place that you could have access to an alternative if that becomes necessary.
There's a couple ways to look at this. Like right now, you know, when your limb is changing all the time, and like what we're telling you is, hey, there's a lot of inconsistencies, and this is part of the process. So you can see why, if that's what's happening, trust in your prosthetist is so important, because if you don't have trust, you're going to be doubting, like, well, gee, is my limb really changing, or do they not know what they're doing? Did I not have a good fit to begin with? We hear these things all the time. Traveling, if you look at going outside of your bubble too, like Nate was talking about, that's not going to be as frequent the more seasoned your residual limb becomes. So if you're 2 years post-op or 3 years post-op, you're not going to be having to go every week. You might get a prosthetic socket that's going to fit you, and now you're good for 3 years. It doesn't mean you might not get a couple adjustments a year, but it kind of brings us back to something you were talking about earlier, and we were talking about that 2 years. You know, you said 2 years seems like so long. We know when we say that, it spooks people at the beginning, but you have to think of it like this. 2 years means maximize on the prosthetic limbs. So you're a few months into this. It gets better as you go, though. It's not like, oh, it's going to be this bad for 2 years. It means if you stick with the process, 3 months from now is going to be, you're going to get more consistency. Things will continue to start to get better. That second year is really a lot more enjoyable when we talk about the adapting to the prosthetic limb, increasing your functional level, all those other things, because you're getting consistency with your limb. So when we're talking about going outside your bubble and doing some other things, if need be, you just got to realize where you're headed in this process a year from now is going to be different than where you're at. So you only know what you're experiencing at this time. So things that could seem like a lot more difficult of a challenge, but it's temporary. So I just felt it was important to mention that as well.
Thank you.
Well, good luck.
Thank you.
And keep us posted, please.
Right. Absolutely.
Okay. All right.
So the next one on our screen is Paul. Paul, if you'd like to unmute yourself and say hello, if you have a question, that'd be great.
Hello.
Yes.
Hey, Paul, how you doing?
Could be better, but I'm all right.
Yeah.
I'm tired of sitting in the chair.
Yeah. So Paul's a patient of mine, and he's got it. If you don't mind my saying, I'll give you a brief version of what Paul's dealing with. He's got a wound on his residual limb, and we're trying to get that healed up so we can get him back in a prosthetic socket. So.
Right.
So how are things looking, Paul?
There's no more infection, but it's not closing.
Okay.
The current, he's got me putting silver alginate inside the wound, but it's not getting worse, but it's not getting better. So
well, go ahead.
What's that?
I was just going to say, I know it's not moving as fast as you'd like, but the fact that it's healing slowly or not getting worse, I mean, that's sometimes we were talking earlier about the glass is half full. Sometimes we have to lean on those things and you know, hang on to those positives, because if it was going the other direction, well, that would be really bad, obviously. So.
Right. I mean, I'm thankful that it's not getting worse, but like I said, I'm tired of sitting in the chair. I'm so independent that you know, this delay is hard.
Yeah. I mean, unfortunately, with waiting, if we have our initial amputation, waiting to get into the prosthetic limb, setbacks, all these things. I mean, that is it's a reality. I think too oftentimes it's overlooked. You know, we were talking about in the medical community when people say, oh, you know, technology's come a long way, you're going to do great. But, you know, we get sores, we do things and we have setbacks, and people will oftentimes talk about, oh, somebody like me, oh, well, you're so active, you can run triathlons, you can do all this other stuff. So you don't really have a disability, or they want to take people's disability away. And what we realize during these moments is without our prosthetic limbs, we're all equally disabled. You know, they want to be so quick to say you don't have a disability. And it's like, which is just crazy because we all experience, yours is unfortunately longer than what, you know, everybody has to deal with, you know, not on a regular basis. But it is very frustrating because once something happens and we can't use our prosthetic limbs, we're confined to the wheelchair. There's just no way around it. And I think that's too often overlooked by insurance companies. People just don't really understand the struggles that we deal with, even though we may be able to put on a prosthetic limb, because Paul was doing great with his prosthesis. But once you take that away, you are right back to that place where you were before we fit you with the prosthesis.
Well, the fact of the matter is I can do most things from the chair. There's only like one or two things that I can't do, but it doesn't replace the being able to walk down the street or walk through the store, or walk to the car, you know, just the simple things.
Just because you can do it doesn't mean it's better than walking.
Right.
Right. We get by.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's more difficult, you know, you gotta, it's the reason the prosthetic limbs are medically necessary is because they make life easier. It's easier to do things with two limbs than it is with one.
Right, and it plays, I've got other medical things going on right now, and you know, one thing that I did notice throughout this ordeal is that it plays with your mental health a little bit. When other things are going on, and it's almost kind of a letdown, for the lack of a better word.
It
but,
does.
You know, you try to push through it and try to see on the bright side of things, and you know.
It's like we were just saying in the last call. Here's you got to try to find the positive sometimes, and you've had some success with the prosthesis already, so you can lean on. You know that when your residual limb is healthy, you'll have success again because you've already answered that question. You know, prior to when you had that initial amputation and you've never worn a prosthesis before, where we always wonder, what if 99 people did great on a prosthetic limb and I'm the one that it doesn't work for? So you know you'll have success.
Right.
And another thing that we often say. You know, we talk about, we have certain phrases that we say because we want them to resonate. It's 60% mental and 40% physical.
Sure.
It is a challenge on your mental. And again, this is the part that frustrates us with insurance companies and other things. It's like where it's often so overlooked that things like this happen. And this is living our life as an amputee. We're all vulnerable to this. This could happen to any one of us at any given time. We have a patient in our Lansing office. She doesn't have an infection or a sore, but she was sitting on the edge of her bed, or she was going to get her coffee and she fell out of her wheelchair. And she didn't have her leg on yet the morning, and boom, she's, you know, I mean, we're all vulnerable. This can happen to any one of us, and we could be laid up for a small period of time or a longer period of time. I couldn't imagine, but if that was me, I wouldn't be able to go to work. I wouldn't be able to run my practice. We have to make decisions sometimes to protect ourselves from falls and other things. In your case, you can protect yourself from a wound, but this is a reality that, like we say, it's just too oftentimes overlooked because without our prosthetic limbs, we're all equally disabled. It doesn't, I can't do any triathlon. Like I said, if you and I are both in a wheelchair, we can have a wheelchair race, but that's about it.
Yeah.
So,
oh boy.
Do you have any other questions, Paul, or were you just kind of, it's good to see you.
Yeah, it's good to see you too. It's been a while.
Yeah.
My appointment is the 21st, so that's I just want my leg back. Yeah,
well, I want to get you back on it. So, well, let us know how things are going, okay?
Yeah, I sure will.
All right, you take care.
I got it.
Yeah, you too.
Yep. So Thanks, Paul. So it looks like Jeremy had his hand up. So Jeremy, if you had a question for us, go ahead.
Don't forget to go back to
Okay.
Jennifer.
Hi, thanks. Sure. Actually, when I first put my hand up, it was while Robin was speaking, and I wanted to. I'm 15 years down the road ladder as a result of surviving some pretty severe burns. And so especially in those early days, I could totally relate in regards to the pain and questioning how long is it going to feel this way. And I could tell you, I learned pretty quick that if it's painful, then there's a problem with the fit and it needs to be addressed. If it's will be able to overcome as you get more comfortable and tolerant with your prosthetic. So the question, I guess, is, and I guess also for the last guy, I've so many setbacks. You got to not be having the benefit of being able to step away from the need or want to is so much better than the alternative. And I mean, there are times when I get on the floor and I move furniture, have better balance and control of the furniture. But then there are other times when I need to be able to get up and grab the thing my wife put on top of the fridge because she didn't want me to eat it. But I guess the question would be, I am using a pair of power knees, sir, and because of contractures in my hips, I've never gotten to the point where I can walk unassisted without needing a pair of loft strength. Lately, modifying a particular style of martial art to both point where my ankles are like no longer snapping back into place when I rotate and like that. Recommendations in regards to like what kind of technology I should be looking at if I'm doing that kind of activity, and from a ankle and knee standpoint, is there something that would be more functional?
So you broke up just a little bit there, Jeremy, but I think you were saying that you're on bilateral power knees.
Yes.
Right now with hip flexion contractures using loft strand crutches, and that you're trying to do some martial arts. Yes. Okay. So, and you're just wondering if there's, so the number one thing that I would suggest to you as in aside from technology and those things is stretching with those hip flexion contractures. That's going to be kind of, you know, that's going to be your number one thing, range of motion for all the things that you want to do, especially if you're trying to get into martial arts and those things, having as much range of motion in your hips. I mean, if you think about I mean, some of those moves that I don't do martial arts myself, but I mean, you see the moves and stuff like that, and they have hips that are more mobile than mine are. That's for sure. So right. Even above and beyond technology, my number one thing is to stretch as much as possible.
So if you can get on your stomach, lay on your stomach to help stretch out that have they advised you of that already? Laying on your stomach would be good to help stretch.
So part of the challenge with the contractures, and some of it is how much work do I want to put into it? How much time do I spend on the floor or on a hard surface trying to stretch those contractures? But also, the amputations were a result of severe burns. And part of that included abnormal bone growing in the hip. So that's actually what caused the contractures. So we're talking years of that with a physical therapist really, really, really actively pulling. We've been able to get to neutral. But otherwise, I'm pretty much, I've got full flexion and no extension on the left hip.
But you've gotten to neutral.
Neutral's good.
Neutral, that's good. That's a lot right there.
Do you have scar tissue on your residual limb?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's obviously another challenge there as well.
Yeah.
This is kind of an out there question, but do you feel like your your sockets, like your prostheses, have your hip flexion contractures adequately incorporated into their design? Do you feel like when you stand up, you can stand up straight without putting too much pressure on your lower back?
Yes. Yeah, we actually did modify the angle of the socket so that it would mimic or mock the range of motion that I'm.
Right.
So
Right.
if that
Very
makes
good.
sense.
Yes, absolutely.
No,
Very good.
that's what we were looking for.
That's very good. And all that stuff is you, as you know, all that stuff is the foundation, right? We could suggest knees and feet, but if they're not put on there right, then you're gonna be like, well, what were these guys talking about? So obviously, martial arts isn't really my specialty. Obviously, that's not something I've really ever done before.
I grew up watching Kung Fu
right.
theater, but that's about it.
There is some connection.
Yeah, but it's balance, right? I mean, what you're really seeking out is balance. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, that is the issue, is that my center of balance is no longer where it belongs.
Right.
So trying to accommodate that.
So balance comes from it comes from our core a lot, but then once we get to our lower extremities, balance comes from 2 points. It comes from our ankles and from our hips. So you don't have ankles anymore, so we're not going to be working on balance there anymore. Now we're talking about your hips.
It's really all on the hips.
So what happens is the ankles do fast twitch motions. They do small corrections really quickly to keep us balanced. But in our hips, the kind of muscle that we have in our hips does big, slow movements. What you need to start working on is doing exercises that are going to recruit fast twitch muscle fibers into your hips.
Interesting.
And so that your hips are going to be more in line of making those small, quick corrections that your ankles would have done before. There's some, if you want to circle back and watch some of our step up videos that we have posted, there's some really good, like the first or second clinics, we really kind of go over a lot of those basic, the building blocks of those exercises, which those become really important, kind of identifying the control points inside of your sockets so that you can move your femur inside the socket and maintain that balance, so that you can think about when you need to shift to your heel of your prosthetic foot, or shift to the toe, big toe or little toe, those things. Where do you push inside of your prosthetic socket to do those? Those are going to be really important things. And then repeating those exercises is going to be really big too.
And if you go back even to the very beginning, we start out by identifying the muscle groups so you know where and how to fire those muscles to identify inside, which is really, a lot of people aren't doing this kind of stuff or familiar with it even. So these are going to, for the type of stuff you're talking about with your center of balance, these are going to be very instrumental in that. And you'll find that in all of our step up clinics, we always have a section where we're working on exercises that are specifically for balance. And they'll all pertain to the core. So like Nate had mentioned, if you go back and look through some of our previous stuff, you should be able to see there should be quite a bit there, hopefully.
And then another question, do you still work with a physical therapist now?
Not regularly. The point you were making, I tend to forget about the fact that I get more visits every year. So yeah, we haven't actually gathered for a bit, other than me doing some demonstrations to her students every now and then. And that was the other thing I was going to suggest to anybody who's struggling to get, that continued therapy or whatever, is to maybe look for universities in the area with physical therapy programs, because they are always looking for patient volunteers to work with their students. So I actually love how to walk in a hallway at one of those universities, because I ran out of my physical therapy visit as I was getting my first set of prosthetics. So
I would say this too, though.
Yeah.
And I would strongly emphasize with Nate, what you're talking about doing, definitely go back and look to get into physical therapy. But maybe with if you're in the university and you're working with some of these students who are green, you need to screen physical therapists because the type of stuff you're talking about is very specific. And most physical therapists on the prosthetic limbs, but you'll know when you find a good one because they're not going to run out of ideas and they're going to keep pushing you. You should feel like so I would just go to other clinics, talk to different people, say, hey, I'm an amputee. I think you said you were a bilateral amputee. Is that correct? You have experience in working with them. And this is, so as you heard us mention earlier, most physical therapists who want to specialize in working with amputees, they don't get the opportunity to work with people outside of getting them up to that functional level. They're going to be excited to work with you because they get to work on some of these advanced techniques that they don't, well, hopefully they are because they're specializing with amputees, but they'll have a program for you, but most people won't. Like what you're talking about doing, other than walking with a walker, if you're just going there and walking with a walker, then keep looking.
Right. One other question before you're able to go on to the next, but I didn't, as a bilateral, got me up on a pair of hydraulic knees right away. I've seen a lot lately about bilaterals gaining better balance control by working on stubbies. With my hip contractures, I'm assuming that's not even an option and that was why we didn't do that to start off with. But any thoughts there?
I guess the idea that is absolutely true, and stubbies are a really good step. But if you were able to start with mouth knees, then you were already beyond what you could get from stubbies.
You would have benefited more by starting with stubbies. Stubbies are like for somebody.
Those are for the people that probably couldn't operate the knees yet. So we're trying to get core. We're trying to get enough hip range of motion so that you can operate these things. That the real basic stuff at that level, and then introduce knees. Obviously with stubbies you can't really use them aside from in training.
Right.
Interview this guy.
So the other thing I wanted to say real quick was I wanted to give you the name Robert Gailey, Gailey, and he's a physical therapist that really specializes in a lot of these techniques like we're talking about. He's got a lot of resources out there online, or if you're talking to a physical therapist, I would also kind of suggest that they look into his stuff.
Interesting.
Yep.
And if you talk to a physical therapist, because he does clinics, which we've attended, like Nate had said, and we've gone to these clinics with physical therapists. So if you talk to a physical therapist who knows Bob Gailey, you're in the right arena.
Right.
Okay. Because you're not going to find him by accident, really.
Exactly.
People who are looking for advanced amputee training are seeking him out. So yeah, if you could throw that name around, but you happen to be talking to a physical therapist who knows that name, you're on the right path.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for coming.
Good luck.
Yep. All right. I think we had a question from Chris coming next.
Hello.
Hi, Chris.
Hi. I have two questions for you. I'm a below knee amputee and I use a pin lock system. And ever since I had the amputation, my legs sweat so much that I can't keep
It's been raining
aligned
quite a bit.
and I fall out of it all the time.
So you're falling out of the prosthetic sockets because you're perspiring inside of the liners and you're actually milking your way out of the liners?
Yeah, within 10 minutes. And I've seen, I've asked my 2-3 different prosthetists and my family doctor, and I got the sweat sock. I used the antiperspirant, and so far nothing has helped. And so I didn't know if there was another idea to try to get rid of all the sweat. I even talked to somebody about sweat gland removal.
Well, there's a few different things here. So focusing just on how much you're perspiring might not be, I'm going to ask you some questions. Have you tried any different liner types or had any different liner sizes recently?
Yes, I've tried 2 different liner types.
Okay.
How about sizing though? Because that's another important part of it too.
Yeah, well, this new guy just moved to this area, and this new prosthetist, he gave me a smaller liner, but it doesn't seem to be working any better. I mean, just it's so fast. I'm saying within 10 minutes that I have it on, honestly, I'm sliding out of them.
Okay. Well, we wanted to get to the size and types because oftentimes we can see, we talked earlier about people change. So if your limb is shrinking and you're starting out in the prosthesis, a lot of these gel liners or silicone liners, they're size specific. And if they're too big, you get friction inside of the prosthetic socket, which creates heat, which leads to perspiration. And a lot of times they're chasing other techniques like deodorants and things like that. When changing the liner size, that you could have some quicker success. It sounds like you've already spoken to somebody. It sounds like this has been an ongoing issue and you're seeking out other prosthetists and looking for different answers, and that's good. How long have you been wearing the prosthetic limb?
3 years.
Has this been a problem the whole time?
It has.
It has been. Okay.
Have you tried a suction socket or a vacuum socket system? Like
I
you
did
mentioned,
try a vacuum socket. Yes, I did try a vacuum socket. And it took care of the sliding out of the liner. But the problem was that I'm so active that I would wear right through the top, I forget, sleeve, I guess, the sleeve in just a couple weeks. And I couldn't keep replacing it as often as I needed to. So I would lose all the suction.
So you had success with the system and the reducing the perspiration, because what the vacuum does too is it's supposed to wick moisture, but you're saying the problem was just the holes in the sleeves?
Yes.
So there are different sleeve types. I would honestly, we're fans of trying to stick with what's working, and it sounds, I mean, that's a system that one of the big things that it's designed for is people in trying to wick moisture out of it, and how you do that too. And I mean, you don't just put a vacuum pump on and that happens. There's systems, and making sure that's set up right is very instrumental in the success of that. But there are definitely suspension sleeves that are softer, that puncture easier. There are more, and they're more expensive, but they're definitely can last longer. I'm very active. I wear a suction system.
When he says they're more expensive, he's saying that from a prosthetist standpoint. They all cost the same to people who use a prosthesis.
But sometimes we see
some of them cost us more.
They cost us more, but a lot of clinics may have one. They wouldn't have these in stock. We have so many people on these types of systems. We don't have a choice because we'd be replacing sleeves every 2 weeks,
right?
Like you're talking about. So did you try different sleeves, or did it just run its course and become frustrating, and then we changed to a different system without trying any different sleeves?
The prosthetist I was seeing at the time, no, he just kept replacing them for me. It was just the same thing over and over and over.
See, there's a lot of different suspension sleeves on the market, and I would.
There are also things besides, aside from the suspension sleeves, there are things that can be done to kind of help pad the trim lines of the socket so that they make it less likely when you do bump your prosthesis on something that might be less likely to puncture.
Protective covers. We have farmers, people who are like very heavy duty with heavy farm machine equipment. I mean, you need to keep working with things until you find success, but it sounds like, I understand your problem, but it sounds like you found a system that was better suited for you. Right. And I guess what I'm trying to say is it's circling around, because the sleeve puncture holes in suspension sleeves is a very common thing. Coming up with solutions for them, it can be challenging for the prosthetist, but if the system worked, that's what you need to do. I would guess.
That would be my suggestion also, especially, if you're saying if you can't go more than 10 minutes without your prosthesis sliding off, that's way outside the realm of acceptable. I mean, even if you have to replace a sleeve every 2 weeks, even if that would be the best case scenario, there are pathways for that if that's your only option.
Well, and you got to think, we didn't even get to talk about some things, but depending on how much soft tissue you have in your residual limb, sometimes the pin system, it may not be a perspiration issue, but the pin system isn't suited for you, because if you have a lot of fleshy, all your suspension is from the bottom. So if you have a lot of fleshy tissue in there and you're just getting a lot of pistoning and milking, like we said before, if the liner is too big, that's going to create perspiration, because again, that's friction. So to get a pin, if you're very active, and I think you mentioned that you were, The problem with
Yes.
the pin system is there's just too much friction inside of the socket. So
Okay.
I mean, you really, these are the kinds of questions that you need to talk when you have your next conversation with your prosthetist. You know, hopefully this is giving you some good information where you can go back and ask some solid questions and try to come up with some solutions.
Okay, I do
It
have
sounds
one
like
more
you were
question.
close. Pardon me?
This new prosthetist that I just went to, he made me a new leg and it's way too long and he said he can't fix it. So I put lifts in my other shoe to make me closer in height, but then because I have neuropathy, it rubbed my ankle off on my other foot.
Okay, so let me get this straight. So the socket wasn't too long or too deep. The socket fit is fine, but the prosthesis was just too tall.
Yes.
I have a hard time understanding. For one, if it's not right, it needs to be fixed.
Right.
Period.
That's period.
There's no such thing as I can. If you have to redo it, you redo it. You can't have leg. For one, you can have back.
Right.
That's not a minor thing. But you should be in an adjustable system where all he has to do
sometimes feet, depending on build height, there are times where a prosthesis the final construction of a prosthesis may not be adjustable height-wise. I think Scott hit the nail on the head. Then there needs to be a redesign. If that's not
Right.
if that's not the right height for you and your hips can't be level when you stand
then you
on
don't
it,
have the right foot if that's the
then
reason
then
or
then
something.
it's been designed wrong, just from the outset.
So how
and
do I
then-
approach him about that? Because he just told me flat out that he couldn't fix it.
So number one is, try to communicate with him again. Just tell him that it's, make sure that he knows that, this has caused a problem on your other foot. If that's not a solution, then the next person I'd speak with is your doctor about it.
Okay.
And make sure that your doctor understands that you're just not in a system that's working for you, and find out if they have any solutions.
Well, no chiropractor or doctor is going to tell you should settle for a leg that's too long.
Exactly.
There's too many complications that you can experience as a result of that.
And it may be something that maybe a conversation maybe a conversation needs to come from your doctor to the prosthetist about how serious this is and how it's not acceptable.
Saying I can't fix it is an unacceptable answer.
And
you can't accept that.
And then, the last place that you can go would be to your insurance company. They did purchase the prosthesis on your behalf. Mm-hmm. I do say that's the last one because obviously you want to try to find a reasonable solution before you go to that, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So that would be, in my opinion, maybe your last course of action. But certainly if you're still not getting the results that you need by the time you've gone to talk to him, talk to your doctor, then there's no, then I mean, the insurance company would be the next place to go.
One of the things we love about this field and what we do is that all of our products are custom made. Mm-hmm. That means we have the freedom to design and make something that works. So when you said something earlier, and Nate and I were just having a conversation yesterday, so I'll say it since it's coming up. We hate the word I can't. We don't believe in that.
Right.
We if I sold off the shelf products, and I would put them on you and this is all that I have, but we make stuff. That means whenever something isn't working for somebody, we design and make stuff so that it does what it's supposed to do. And it's just a matter of, like I said, a lot of the reason why we got to the point where we like to have our own clinics and we're owners is because we can take ownership and responsibility. If something needs to be redone to get it right or whatever it takes, it's going to be right. So just like we don't like the word I can't in our technical labs. You shouldn't like that in the patient room when you shouldn't accept that from a prosthetist either, I guess. If that's not too much. Well, you shouldn't.
Right. I mean, here's the thing. If it's causing damage to your other foot that's, has neuropathy, then you're putting yourself in a risk of infection, of things, of creating an amputation on your other foot. Yes. And I mean, that preserving that sound limb, preserving that other foot really should be, one of your primary goals.
And the primary goals of your healthcare team.
Yeah, of your team, of the whole.
And I'm going to take it a step further. One of the things that makes a prosthesis medically necessary, according to insurance companies, is how it reduces wear and tear on your sound limb. Well, this is failing to live up to that standard if I'm just arming you with some more information. So.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Yes.
Well, good. Because it makes me, it's hard to walk. It makes me unsteady, obviously, because one leg is higher than the other.
Right.
So,
Can I ask you a question about your prosthesis? Do
Sure.
you have, can you see, is there a metal pole that's in between the socket and the foot? Can you
Yes.
see a pylon? So you can see a pylon?
So you don't have like a cover and scan where it looks like your other leg. You can see the pylon right there.
Yes.
Could you show it to us?
Can
Is
you
that-
see me?
I
We
can't.
can't. I don't know if you can turn your camera on.
I don't know. I'm not very good at this.
Neither are
Sure.
neither are we.
Neither are we. Yeah,
So
don't worry. Sorry.
This is not our forte either, so we understand.
We have a technical team
Right.
in front of us that's doing all this stuff.
Summer, we would, right,
If
I
you
just invited her to start her video.
okay.
just because I wouldn't want, but if you just have a pylon, you should be able to cut it. But if it's
Okay,
Oh,
we
look,
can see you
there
now,
I
Chris.
am.
Hi.
Hey Chris, how you doing?
I did it. Yay. I have to lay it down for
All
a
right.
second.
Well, now you're more advanced than we are.
Right.
Oh, I'm just lucky. Okay.
Sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. I say that all the
Yeah,
time.
I'm trying to change my middle name to Lucky, actually. Okay.
I married an Irish person just to increase my luck.
How did that turn out?
How'd that work?
Pretty good. I've got more luck than I've had previous prior. I mean, I was so unlucky before I met her, I lost a leg. Okay, yeah,
Okay,
go back to
can you
that.
go
We
back to
wanna-
that?
Oh, before I lost my leg, I lost most of my fingers. So,
Oh,
it's
Yeah.
all, it's one step at a time.
Yeah. But yeah, if you could show us the adjustable components on your prosthesis, I just want to kind of get an idea better what we're looking at there.
Actually, I can. Am I taking up too much time? It's going to take me just a minute.
No, not at all. This is worth
yeah.
having a look. We don't want to guide you down one path and find out it's an issue with the foot
Right.
and not the adjustable
Right.
components or socket length or something else.
Okay. Actually, I'm just going to go get it out of the back of my car because
Okay.
Okay.
Well, what
I
we'll do,
can't-
Chris, is maybe we'll move on to the next person and we'll circle back
Yeah,
to you,
why
okay?
don't we just go back to
Sure.
Chris and then
Yeah.
that way you're not worried about rushing around.
Right.
Does that sound good, Chris?
absolutely, I'll be here.
All right,
Okay,
we'll see you
great.
soon.
Okay.
So the next one in the order on our screen would be Jennifer.
Hey, Jennifer, how you doing?
Hi, Jennifer.
Hi, guys.
Hi there.
How are y'all?
Great. How about you?
I'm good. I'm good. I got the parts for my leg in, I think it was Tuesday, and I go Thursday to get my new test socket for my new prosthetic leg. And then
Okay.
I'm going to take those parts with me and they're going to try to fix me up. So I'm so excited.
Great.
Awesome.
Yeah, great news. So, yeah, you're
Okay,
still
that's
trying to
fine.
get in the water this year, right?
Yes, and I want y'all to know my daughter, my oldest daughter, she gave me a kiddie pool for my grandkids, right? And
Uh-huh.
so my youngest daughter that lives with me, she inflated it and we filled it up with water. And I got in it for the first time I've been in a pool since I have had my leg amputated. It was a kiddie pool, but I still got in. I was so excited.
Awesome.
But anyway, yeah, I'm really excited. And I was going to touch on something that somebody said about the sweating.
Mm-hmm.
I know you're not supposed to do this, and I almost hesitate to say it in front of everybody because I know that it's a no-no, but I got to tell you this anyway. Okay, so I sweat a lot too. I was in the pin system. That was the first leg I had. I ended up with blisters on the bottom of my stump. And so they switched me to the suction. I guess it's the suction. It's not, yeah, it's the suction. Okay. And so, but here's my thing. I kept losing my leg as well. It kept sliding down, right? So they tried to give me these liners, sock things that you put underneath your liner, but there was no elastic at the top of it. You know what I'm saying? Like up at your thigh. So I thought, okay, I've got to have something that's going to stay up. That's just not staying up. So what I did was I put my shrinker on And then I put my liner on. And of course I got in trouble for that, but it helps to absorb the sweat, and it helps me, and I don't lose my leg that way. I mean, yes, sometimes it'll still slide down if I get really, really sweaty, but for the most part, it helps hold it in place. And I'm not recommending that because I know that that's a no-no, but I'm just saying that that's what I've done.
Jennifer, that's with your suction socket that you're doing that?
Yes, it is.
Does your suction socket, do you wear a knee sleeve, a suspension sleeve that goes on the outside that comes up on your thigh?
Is this what, whoops, sorry. Is this
That's
what
okay.
you're talking about, this?
Yes.
Yep.
Yep. Yeah.
Yes,
so
I do.
You know, so I mean, it's obviously wearing a shrinker under a liner is maybe unorthodox, but I would be lying if I didn't have if I said I didn't have patients that did the same thing as an option. I would not under any circumstances suggest doing it with a pin.
No.
With a pin,
No.
you know, you're relying on the suction of that silicone against your skin to hold everything in place. So, you know, having a barrier in between that could cause the liner to come right off. But inside of a suction socket, that's not an unreasonable solution.
That liner would work as an air wick, and it would you would milk out of the pin system. With your suction system and that suspension sleeve, your seal is proximal to all that.
Yes.
So it may allow for a little bit more movement, but if you're you know, sweating profusely, then you're getting a lot of movement from that. So you're probably experiencing a decrease in movement. What I would mention to you that you may not be familiar with, they do make socks out of shrinker material that are similar to that are made specifically for absorbing perspiration in suction socket systems. Yeah, have you tried those, or are you aware that those exist?
No.
You may have even greater success with those than the actual shrinker socks because they're made for that and they can actually hold more. So I would ask your prosthetist about
it's called an underliner sheath.
Underliner sheath.
Now, they did give me something that's kind of made out of like a really soft, maybe cotton or something. I don't really know what it was made out of.
This is more like a nylon, and it's silver.
It's going to be very. It's going to feel like your shrinker material. Yeah, it'll be similar to that.
Okay.
It'll be silverish.
Okay, I will ask them.
We've even had people wear them with the gel liners where they have the pin system, as long as that, again, like they have a seal proximal. They work really well. If you haven't, if what you're doing right now is wearing that shrinker underneath there, and you haven't tried one of these, you really need to try one. And I'd appreciate it if you did try it. And you were able to circle back with us and kind of let the group know if that was an improvement or not for you.
I will. I will do that. I was going to say something too about the new. Well, they're changing my liner. When they made my new socket, they had me. When they did the casting, they put on the new liner is like so much more thinner, like really, really thin. And it's supposed to be for people that perspire a lot. Okay. And I'm not really sure. It's a silicone liner. Does that make sense?
Do you know the name of the company that makes it? Is it Ohio
I think
Willowwood?
it starts with the O.
Yeah. Yeah. Is it a bluish type material that might be more porous?
It looks like what color was that? Light gray. Like a light gray, very light gray.
And on the outside, is it like a silver or light gray? I'm thinking it was probably one of those Autobach.
Yeah.
Is it Autobach? Does that sound familiar?
Maybe that's right.
It's probably one of those
Autobach.
Like
6x75.
Yep. I'm thinking it's one of those. So those are nice liners. They are thinner and they don't elongate a lot. So they do. Those are good for that. What Scott was saying, there are liners that are made by a different company called Willowwood. It used to be called Ohio Willowwood. They just go
That's
by
what
Willowwood
I have right now.
That's
what I have right now.
They make a liner that's called a Smart Temp liner. Smart Temp. And it's actually made with a different formulation for their gel that you know, I don't wear a prosthesis. I've never put one on my limb and had it on all day long. But when you touch your hand to it, even if it's on a hot day, if you touch your hand to it, it does feel cool to your skin. I have some people that
Really?
use those successfully also.
Yeah, that's kind of one of those things that's worth trying, but I will say this, if you are.
But those out-of-box liners are good liners
No,
too.
theoretically, what you're looking at with the Autobox 6x75 liners, they have a different umbrella. And I had mentioned earlier when we were talking about perspiration, how you want to minimize that elongation in the system. That's what that liner is designed to do. I would certainly, I would try that if you're already on that path before you try the other liner, because I just think you have a higher probability for success by changing the liner. Well, I don't want to say higher, you have a good chance, you have a good shot at success. If not, that would be another option. So it's
Are you
just kind of really
talking about
knowing-
the new one that they're giving
The
me?
one that they're trying.
The one they're trying now is going
Yeah.
to give you an opportunity,
Okay.
good opportunity for success. If not, then you could ask us about the other Ohio Willowwood one. for
You,
the
you know,
temperature
the
control.
Willowwood one has two different colors, so you can tell which one goes on the top and which one goes on the bottom. You know what I'm talking about? But the new one, it's all one color.
Right.
So you have
But
to
there's
look
no-
inside
there's
it.
There's no
Right.
top or bottom on it.
The one you're talking about,
Right.
we're talking about too, is different than the previous one, because you'll know, because that gel material inside is like a bluish
Right.
color.
Okay.
So, yeah,
This
it's
one
different
here-
than it's not the regular Willowwood liners. It's a special liner that's made specifically
Right.
to reduce perspiration.
Right.
Okay. All right. Well, I will try this one that they're trying me out on, and then if that doesn't work out, I will get back in touch with Brianna and get the name of that other one.
Yeah, we can give you the name of the, but yeah, please let us know how that works out.
Okay. I really
All right.
appreciate y'all doing this extra class.
Yeah.
Well, we're glad it's kind of neat that we're starting to see
Right.
regulars now.
Right,
so.
exactly.
So
Yeah.
I
thanks
know.
for
I
supporting
really
us. We
enjoy it.
appreciate it.
Uh-huh. Yes. Thank y'all.
Are we going to circle back
Yeah,
to
let's
Chris?
go back.
I
Yep.
think she's.
I think, Chris, are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right.
Okay.
Let's see what you got. Yeah.
There's
plenty of pylon.
Yeah, like I said, I wanted to give the benefit of the doubt in case there were some other issues, but I see no reason why that can't be changed. They should just be able to. Yeah,
the height on that prosthesis is absolutely adjustable.
Oh, well.
It would require cutting, it would require disassembling it, cutting that pylon, and then reassembling it. So it's not something that you can do on your own, obviously.
But it
it's
shouldn't
certainly,
even be hard for the
that is certainly
prosthetist.
something that is adjustable. And it has a lot of adjustability that's still there and available.
Okay.
If I had that in my schedule and that was all I had to do, I'd call that an easy appointment.
Right. Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Well, I hope that he agrees to do it. That's what I'm hoping.
So like I said, don't
Talk to your doctor if he
don't
doesn't.
hesitate to bring your doctor, whatever doctor you had that wrote the prescription for you to get this. Don't hesitate, because that doctor does not want your other heel breaking down.
No.
I know that. I know that other doctors that wants that other heel in good condition. They don't want you putting lifts in your shoe or having to do those things. They want the prosthesis to be built right.
When we first started in prosthetics, the probability for a second amputation after an initial in diabetics was a lot higher than it is now, and it's reduced because the advancements in technology and specifically prosthetic feet, because they reduce the impact on the heel at heel strike of your sound limb. So that's what. So what you're dealing with there is very important. It's not something that should be taken lightly, because if that prosthesis is higher, your impact on your heel, and that's something that can start a wound on a foot and create a pressure ulcer. So,
right.
Well aware.
what was written on the front of your socket? I couldn't quite read that.
Some assembly required. Did you come up with that?
Yes,
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
I like it.
Yeah, me too.
it made sense to me.
It does make sense. Right.
Well, I hope we answered your question.
You surely did. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Good luck, and be sure to follow up with us and let us know how things worked out.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thanks.
Bye.
All right. The next person I see that we have on is Maria. Maria, if you'd like to unmute yourself, if you introduce yourself and ask any questions. Oh, I'm sorry, Mary Ann.
We don't have the full.
Yeah, it's cut off on my screen. Sorry, Mary Ann.
You mean me?
Yes, we do. Yep. Hi, Mary Ann.
Hello. I didn't
Hello?
necessarily have a question, except that I was going to basically ask about balance because I'm a double above knee amputee.
Okay.
And I've been trying to balance since 2019. I was pretty good on my stubbies. And then I went to mechanical knees and I can walk with a walker. And then I went to sea legs and I can still walk with a walker, but not well. I don't have the balance.
So we were talking earlier about physical therapy. Are you still in physical therapy? Are you getting physical therapy annually when you qualify for more visits, or are you doing this
I'm from
without
South
the help of
Dakota.
physical therapy?
I'm from South Dakota. So as long as my prosthesis guy says that I still need him, I get it. I've been at it since 2019.
Okay, so you've been in physical therapy since 2019.
Yeah.
Very good. Okay. I mean, that's great.
That's great.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So I didn't realize South Dakota had
I was gonna
benefits like
say,
that. That's
Well, and maybe it isn't South Dakota. Maybe it's just my Sanford insurance because I go to a Sanford clinic.
Yeah,
Okay.
I don't
that
know.
sounds more
Okay.
like it, especially if you're not on Medicare, but you have a private insurance. It's what your insurance is allowing you to do. So,
Right.
because every insurance plan is different. So,
Well, I have Medicare too because I'm 67 years old, but
Okay. Yeah. Now, so do you feel like there were points along the way that you've done better, or do you feel like it's just kind of been a constant plateau, or do you feel like it's getting better? How do you feel like you are compared to where you were a year ago?
I've only had these since November, my sea legs, but I was doing probably 600 feet with my mechanical knees and not having any problem. And now I got my sea legs and I'm struggling to do 200 feet at a time.
So let me ask you a few different questions to try to figure out what's going on. When you got the sea legs, were new legs made? I mean, were these the whole prosthetic limb systems brand new?
Oh yeah, because my sockets were just terrible.
Okay.
My legs are still shrinking after 2019. So
when your previous sockets were ill-fitting, would you say you were still able to walk further with the ill-fitting sockets than you were the new ones?
yeah. But
So it
he
sounds like
kept putting stuff in them,
Sure.
Yep.
But I mean, if it's not, I would just say, for one, I can't imagine, you never say never, but there shouldn't be a scenario where if you could walk well on the mechanical knees, you shouldn't be able to walk better with the sea legs. But like we always tell people, the sea legs are not going to work. The best foot in the market is not going to work if that prosthetic alignment isn't proper. And a big part of the alignment that's often overlooked is the placement of that socket block, where it is in relation to the socket, the knee, and the foot. And these things can greatly affect your ability to balance, to walk, all those things on the prosthetic limbs. So let me ask you another question. The previous prosthetic limbs that you had with the mechanical knees, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions. Did the same prosthetists make those that made the previous prosthetic legs for you, or were you working with somebody new?
No.
Okay. So
you don't go with somebody new in South Dakota very easily.
Well, but I'm wondering, when you change knees and you change components, sometimes you have to change the alignment of the socket and that type of thing. So I'm just trying to trying to nail down some specific areas where things may have changed.
I have a question about the sea legs. Do you notice that the prosthetics are more heavy than they were with the mechanical knees, or is that not really an issue?
They're a little bit more heavy, but I really am having trouble because I drag my left leg, and I didn't do that with the mechanical knees. But it's short. I mean,
so the sea legs, especially the new sea legs, back 5 years ago, or maybe even a little bit longer than that, when we had sea legs, the company they gave us software that we could really do a lot, and we could really manipulate the settings on there, and we could change things a lot, so we could tailor how they work to you and to your gait. and have them operate the way that is most functional for you.
We had much more freedom as clinicians too.
So some of the advances that they've made in the technology, they've taken some of those things away. So now it really, if you're dragging that leg and you're having trouble bending the knee, is that correct? That on the left side you're having trouble bending the knee?
Yeah, it's much easier if I just don't bend the knee. I can just pick it up and swing it forward.
Right.
No.
So that is going to be alignment dependent. So what that means is if you aren't able to bend that knee, it means that the knee isn't positioned correctly in relationship to the prosthesis in your body, and that needs to be changed. It's one of the things that especially obviously being somebody that's bilateral above the knee and even walking with a walker and doing what you're doing for 3 years puts you in the top 1% of people that have bilateral above the knee amputations. I'm not exaggerating. So don't stop fighting the fight. You keep doing what you're doing, because even though you're not doing what you want yet, you're still continuing to put in the work, and you're still setting yourself up for success. So keep that up. But maybe it's something that you could suggest to your prosthetist, to have somebody from the company come out, somebody from Autobach,
yes,
who manufactures the C-Leg, come out and maybe reevaluate some things, maybe give some pointers and tips about, something that you presented. I would say that you present a challenging case being bilateral above the knee. So maybe having them use more resources and more of the team approach. That C-leg should bend just as easy as your other knee did when it's put in the right place.
And I do want to say, I'm glad you brought up the point about the settings and things that are different, because Robin had mentioned something earlier. I think she said that they were looking to set her definitive prosthetic limb up on a Rio knee, and we got to talking about several things, as we often do when we're trying to diagnose these things. But I wanted to tell her, like, I want to tell Mary Ann something that you guys should be aware of. There are other microprocessor knees, and they do function differently for people. Oftentimes in our clinic, we don't just say, hey, you're going to get a Rio or you're going to get a C-leg, because we find, and like Nate said, there were some advantages. There are advantages to each, but some of them just work because they respond differently as depending on how you transfer your weight to that prosthetic side, where those limitations that we have to make those adjustments. Changing the knee can help us adjust it so that it functions better for you. So, Robin, you might want to suggest to your prosthetist, hey, I'm looking forward to trying the Rio knee, but could I demo the C-leg too? Because these things are the manufacturers will make them available for demos where you can walk in the office and even maybe AB them, try them side by side. And Mary Ann, this might be a case too where had you done, I just wonder if a Rio knee, because in a lot of cases too where they have a hard time transferring their weight to get that C-leg to bend, the Rio knee, these are just like, if you just got it, you may not be able to get it right away, or you might have to working with the alignment, and the representative is probably a better choice for you. But keep in mind, the longer you're on something, the next time you go to get another prosthesis, you might want to demo those other knees. So there are other microprocessor knees besides just the C-leg and the Rio, and I'm not saying I wouldn't demo those. Those are just the two that usually cover the
But in the position that you're in right now, Mary Ann, you don't need to be worried. C-legs are very good knee components.
Yes, you have a
great set of components. You have something that once they're put in the right position for you and everything is dialed in the right way, should help to give you the tools that you need to be successful based on what you're doing and how hard you're working right now. So don't worry that you didn't try other ones. Don't worry. C-legs are still very good. It's just that they do function different than a Rio. They used to, in the past, it used to be one of those things where if they weren't aligned to the prosthesis and to your body just perfectly, then you could go on the computer and you could maybe manipulate a setting or two, and you could make the knee still work properly. That's been taken away now. If that knee isn't put in the exact right position, then what happens is you're left in a position where you're unable to make it bend. And so
I have it downloaded to my phone. I have it downloaded to my phone, and I can change the settings, but I never know which way to go.
No,
That's-
those aren't the things you should be doing.
That's different
right?
than the
That's-
initial
that's
settings we're
right.
talking about.
That's different,
Those
right.
are modes to allow for cycling or free swing and things like that. That's what Nate's talking about are the initial
Like
settings.
the initial programming of the knee that we as clinicians would do.
Right, you won't have access to that
Right.
through your phone app.
Right.
That's different.
Oh, okay.
What
Right.
we're talking about here is really more where the knee is in relation to the socket and that type of thing, and some things that
Okay.
we could try in here to help make it.
So
Well,
I
and
have-
that
Oh,
hip
go ahead, Mary Ann.
does have a little bit of contracture because, I mean, it's a very short leg. It's like
Mhm.
6 inches,
Okay,
you know, and of course I had wound vacs and all that kind of stuff, so that it has some contracture, but not a lot.
Mhm.
But
okay.
it does have it set forward just a little bit.
But again, like manipulating the flexion angle in the socket to try to make it easier. You see, with the mechanical knee, you weren't really experiencing much resistance. And now what the C-leg is designed to do, all of its features that make it function so well, it's because they create hydraulic resistance. The knee will not buckle as fast. So that's why it doesn't let you fall. It will lessen resistance if you needed to swing a head forward. That's what the computer's doing, is it's controlling that fluid there. But with the
Mhm.
mechanical knee, that was just you pick it up the swing and off
Right.
it goes. So that's why the specific settings to this one are so important to get it to
Right.
function best for you.
So I
Okay.
was gonna ask, have you talked to your prosthetist about this?
Well, I see him once a month, so yeah, I'm going again on the 19th, I think. So,
Yep, okay. So yeah, I would make sure, I would make sure to bring up, or a lot of times that, if you were somebody that I was working with, I'd say don't wait for a regular scheduled appointment for something like this. This would be something where if the prosthesis isn't working right, try to call and see if you can get in right away so
Mhm.
that, then you can keep your appointment for the 19th. And that could be a follow-up to say, hey, this worked well for me, or it still wasn't enough.
Mhm.
So that's just one suggestion. But then the second suggestion is just to make sure you're talking with that, this isn't working quite the same way as the other ones were. And that, you think that maybe something needs to change in how the knee is operating so that you can be more successful with it.
okay.
Is the right one easier to use?
Oh, yeah. I
Yeah.
don't have any trouble, but like I say, that leg is, 13 inches long.
Sure.
No, and
You
that's,
know.
And that's a big difference.
And I can
That's a
even
big difference.
feel the muscles in it, and I can't in the short one.
Right,
right.
right.
So
Okay.
I'll ask him.
Yep.
Well, good luck.
All right, thank you. And I'll get back to you and tell you what happens after the 19th.
Fantastic.
Yep,
We
we
love
look
that.
forward to
Yeah,
hearing from you.
absolutely.
All right.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely. Okay.
Did Julie have a question?
Julie, did you have a question? Or want to introduce yourself?
I wonder if it's Julie.
Right. That's what I was wondering. Did we have any questions from any of the other forums?
We got one on Facebook.
Okay.
And it's from Ricky German. And Ricky said, I am a right below knee amputee and have a suction socket for a while. It's a K4 and was wondering what is the best way to build up to jogging and running?
Okay. So we had a question on Facebook. I'm not sure if everybody could hear. Can everybody hear you talk? Probably not. So we had a question on Facebook from Ricky, who said that he's in a suction socket and he's in a K4 system, and he's wondering about ways that he can kind of build up to walking and running.
Mm-hmm.
So the first thing that we're going to kind of suggest is, we have a big a library of exercises on our website and on YouTube that can be used for this.
Mhm.
There's a lot of specific things. And then the other thing I'll say is that this is kind of going to be stuff that we are going to be focusing on during our next step up session,
Mhm.
which starts in September. So September, October, November, we'll be having meetings where we're going to be working on some of those exercises and things.
Right.
A lot of running with the prosthesis is just kind of trusting that plant on the toe instead of relying on a heel strike.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So you're going to change the position of your, and I mean, I wonder if this is something maybe
Yeah,
we should
yeah,
make some more.
Can we demonstrate if
Well,
with Scott?
I can't really with this.
But you can just get up against the wall and push,
Well,
because that's a good exercise.
Are we going to do this?
Our technical team loves when we do stuff like this.
I don't know if you want to
So-
have me demo while you
Yeah,
talk. but-
So what Scott's going to show is, just one simple exercise you can do so that it's safe, whether you have somebody there to spot you or not, is up against the wall, 2 hands on the wall, lean into the wall.
They
and
can't really see my
They
prosthetic
can't really
foot
see.
though.
You come right here, to the edge of the table.
Can you see it there?
Yep.
There we go.
You got it. So what I'm trying to do here. So when you run on a prosthesis, you're not going to go heel toe. Okay. The energy that you're trying to use is in the toe or the carbon fiber of the prosthetic foot. What was this gentleman's name?
Ricky.
Okay, Ricky, the first thing is I hope you at least have a carbon fiber foot. The more dynamic and responsive the foot is, if you're gonna, I mean, the questions he was asking, what does he do to look into conditioning himself to
right.
running? So there's some other things we get into. I think we want to first demonstrate what you could do to try to, because another big part of it is conditioning your limb to the perspiration and the forces that are going to happen inside of the socket. So if you think of it, if this exercise is designed so that you can just keep your weight on the toe and you're working that spring, okay? And you can go like this and just continue to work like you're jogging or staying in place, but you can see that I'm not landing on the toe, because what's going to happen on the heel of that prosthetic foot, that's going to absorb all that energy at heel strike. And then it's just dead energy because it doesn't return it like the toe does. So by landing on the toe, you're going to get more of a spring, more of a load on the prosthetic foot. So what is also happening here by just keeping my weight, you can see that the front part of my body is over the toes of the prosthetic foot. So you have to really trust that prosthesis, because when you get out there and you're just running on the prosthesis, your weight is the head of the toes of the prosthesis.
Right.
So that takes a little getting used to. By doing that, using the wall, if you can get resistance bands and things like that, where somebody else might be able to work with you and hold you from behind. These are all good exercises. I believe we might have some of these exercises on the website.
I think there's some of them. We're going to be shooting another batch of exercises next week. We're scheduled to shoot them, and those will be kind of rolling out probably throughout the summer. That will be kind of updating our library again.
We started to get into that at the end of the last step up, how we're going to be working more specifically with those types of things and showing how that could build up to running. But I would say, I do want to mention, hopefully you've spoken to your prosthetist about the desire to run and you're working on foot selection and components. If your insurance allows for a second prosthesis, that can be very important. Because it depends too on the type of running that you're doing. Are we talking about distance running where you're going to go out and do a 5K? Or are we talking about running up and down a basketball court? So you have to understand too that these demands are very different. So it's important that you communicate what your long-term goals are. You may be just starting to find out if you can run and what that's going to be like. So you don't know how to answer that. So as you find that, hey, if I can run up and down the basketball court, now I want to do a 5K or get crazy and do a triathlon, or who would do that, right? But no, it's when we're at the beginning of these journeys as amputees, a lot of times we set out to see what we can do, or we might have smaller goals, and when we surpass those goals, we find out that we can push ourselves and we take it further and further, and that's okay. I like the questions that you're asking. You're like, what do we do as a starting point? Communicate with the prosthetist. That's important. Foot selection is going to be very important. You're already in a suction suspension system, which is good. There are vacuums, but the suspension system of the prosthetic limb is grossly important as well. And that gets into the part where you heard me mention earlier, conditioning your limb. One of the things that when Nate and I were working, when we started doing the triathlons, we wanted to try, design different prosthetic limbs to see how they held up in different environments and what the challenges would be and redesign. So, we were working on this together, but the big thing that really triggered it was I had been an amputee for over 20 years, and distance running, I played basketball, did all kinds of, but that was something I was never comfortable doing since I lost my leg, because I'm not a small person, and that continued impact on my limb was something that was very hard on it. And of course, you start to sweat, and when you sweat, you get more friction, and then it tears up your limb more. So the question that we had was, could we design a prosthesis that would help to wick moisture out of the prosthetic socket? And at the same time, would my residual limb condition itself to the environment if we continued to put it under the same, because we have different areas where we talk about conditioning your limb to certain environments, and we believe that running is the most dynamic form of human motion. So if we could do it under those circumstances, then we would have a formula for doing it in any circumstances. The reason I'm sharing all that information and why I love to talk about it is because we both found that, it didn't happen overnight, but after 5, 6, 7 months of running, I did condition my limb to that environment, and with some of the perspiration reduced because of the vacuum system, mildly. But in the first month I was in it, I still had a lot of perspiration. So what we saw is that amount reduced over time. The system was the same, but what happened is just the more rigorous the exercise, the more we increased the distance, the more we did things. And then more importantly, the longer we kept up with it, the less I would sweat inside of the prosthetic socket. So
it really is a slow building process,
it's a slow building process, sticking with it. So that brings me to the point, a great way to start out, if you get to the point, if you've got, again, speak with the prosthetist, core exercises. Before I even started running, before Nate and I even built the running prosthesis, I was doing core exercises, strength training. I mean, if you're looking at seriously, some people just want to know if they can run. If you're talking about, I'm walking out to the mailbox and it starts to sprinkle and I want to get inside quicker, then this isn't what I'm talking about. I'm talking about if you're talking that you want to really learn how to run on a prosthetic limb and be successful, we have formulas for that. So the strength training, weightlifting, core training, all that stuff, we did 4 months of that before we even started to build my prosthetic limb. So if you've got time to do that, you're asking me how to start, that's where I would start. And at the same time, that's a great time to be communicating with your prosthetist about what your insurance allows, what kind of design if you've got to come up with a prosthesis. That's one prosthesis. There are feet that are better for running than others, and you can still do that too. So once you have that design, and we're talking about conditioning, the reason I brought up the conditioning your limb to the environment and everything is interval running is great. Let's say you're going to go for a 1 mile walk. And if you have a way to do distances where I could do 1/10 of a mile, then I'm going to walk, and then I'm going to run 1/10 of a mile. Or maybe it's half 1/10 of a mile. I don't care. Just commit to, I'm going to do this mile, and I am going to have a goal or whatever, and maybe you're not comfortable when you set up to do every 1/10 of a mile. So you say you're going to do a half,
a distance like people like to use is telephone poles.
Telephone poles. You find your formula that works, because what's going to happen is, okay, I'm going to walk to this telephone pole, then I'm going to run to the next telephone pole, walk to the next telephone pole, run to the next one. What's going to happen is eventually, and not too distant future, maybe even less than a week, you might be going 2 telephone poles. You see so you're going to gradually increase this amount, and you're going to find that when I was going telephone pole to telephone pole, my leg was sweating a lot because I never did this. And over time, because the big niche is, once your limb starts to sweat too much inside of the socket and you get the movement and the friction, you feel like you're falling out of the leg. And once you have less perspiration and things like that, you're going to find that you can go further and longer. So it'll be a gradual process, but it's one that you can have success with. Again, like we were talking about earlier, just starting out on a prosthetic limb, don't expect immediate success. You got to have a plan, we got to have a plan because as human beings, we don't want to get that feeling of failure. Like, I stood up on the leg, I tried to run today, and having realistic expectations. No, that's not failure. That's called getting started.
So, talking more about that plan, is there really any time that, you've been able to limit the perspiration, you've been able to kind of reduce that. Is there any shortcut or cheat to make it not happen at all though? No. And what is the only thing that you can do to really, when that happens, to manage that perspiration? What do you do? So what do you do when you're biking or when you're running? So if you're running in 3 miles and you're sweating, what do you do?
So rubbing alcohol is a great thing. Like if you just take, and you take your gel liner off and I start wiping your residual limb out and you wipe your liner out, you still have moisture, you still have heat in there when you go to put that back on. So the
bacteria from the sweat,
bacteria, right? It's so your distance that you're going to go before you're going to be suffering from the same problems again is going to be significantly shorter than what it was the first time. So that can be frustrating. Something simple like taking rubbing alcohol, putting it on your residual limb in your liner, not only does it force the moisture to evaporate from the limb, so when you put it on, it's like a reset again. It also cools the liner, which is big.
So with that being said, I mean, there are some liner types that aren't conducive to alcohol. So you'd want to make sure that you talk to your prosthetist to make sure that that's acceptable to do for your situation. And I mean, obviously rubbing alcohol can be caustic and dry your skin. Obviously it's not such an issue when you're sweating like that and you're doing those things, so worried about your skin drying out, but using rubbing alcohol on a daily basis might be overdoing it, right? It's not something to do all the time, but it's something that
while
does
you're
work.
running, and again, this is where it's important that we mentioned earlier, traveling to see, having a relationship with your prosthetist where you're communicating about everything that you're doing, because when he goes to choose a liner type for you, if he knows that that's something you're going to want to be doing and you're going to be using rubbing alcohol,
right,
he might choose one that he thinks is more conducive to that than another one. So,
right.
Yeah, the more active you're going to be, communication is huge. Like I said, we talked earlier, somebody was asking about a rehab team. Yes, it's important to have a rehab team of physical therapists, doctors, and everything else. But the prosthetist is the person who's going to be with you probably the most working on these types of things. So
right.
Paul and Chris both raised their hand during this.
Okay.
So Paul or Chris, I think you guys both of you raised your hands.
Let's start with Paul.
Yep, Paul, go ahead.
I just have a silly little question in regards to your final prosthesis. Do you have a choice of what it looks like?
Yes.
In terms of what, Paul? Go ahead.
How far, I mean, what extent of the choice do you have? I know it all is probably according to what insurance you have.
The insurance does dictate to a point. With different prosthetic companies, they may provide, they can challenge on the process. For example, like when Nate said, if you're talking about, I want to make sure we're talking about the right things. A prosthesis that looks like your other legs, so it has like a protective cover and skin, or are we talking about maybe a design on your socket?
Like a design on the socket.
Yes. So if you were to provide, say your prosthetist, or in this case, myself, with a fabric that you wanted me to put on the outside of the socket, we can laminate that into it. So that's pretty simple. That's a simple thing to do.
Right. Pretty much anything that you can get on fabric. A t-shirt, some t-shirts work, some t-shirts don't work, but anything you can get on fabric can be built right into your prosthesis.
So really? That's not really an insurance related. Right. That's not an insurance related topic. That's just about the final fabrication of your. That's why I said I wanted to know specifically what we were talking about, because that's just something with the final fabrication of the prosthetic socket that would be done at that time. That's not that's not a cosmetic or protective cover skin type situation.
Okay. Well, I always wondered that, but never remembered to ask.
Bring it up.
When I've seen
now that you brought it up, I'll try to remember. How's that sound?
Okay.
And if now that you understand how the process works too, if you find a fabric or a t-shirt, anything that has a design on it that you're interested, just bring it in next time you come into the office, and we can talk about it, or we can keep it in your bin, whatever. So.
Okay.
All right.
It sounds good. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Chris?
No, I'm not sure. So was there anything else for us to address?
No, I mean, that was perfect, unless Chris, if you want to do one more call.
Does anybody have any parting comments or questions for us before we say thank you and sign off?
I have a question from Reddit.
Okay.
They said that they can't join the live, but They want to know about elective amputations. Should the patients meet with a prosthetist if possible beforehand?
I certainly would
So
recommend
the
it.
question was just, I don't think they can hear you, can they?
They're not on,
Yeah.
they weren't able to make it.
Okay.
So
the-
can they,
No,
the rest of the group hear you?
So the question that we just had from one of the other places that were putting this out there is about elective amputations. And asking if it would be in the best interest to meet with a prosthetist before an amputation. And I mean, we're obviously going to say without a doubt, yes. I mean, even in cases where it's not an elective procedure and maybe there's a few days between when you find out you need to have an amputation and the surgery is scheduled, any information that you can get prior to that amputation, anything that you can do to kind of start learning about the process, what to expect, all those things is just going to be more knowledge, and that's just going to help to empower you to go through the thing that you're about to go through.
Again, like we mentioned at the beginning of the program, is amputees are less than 1% of the population. So you probably don't have a lot of information or experience in dealing with this topic. Oftentimes people sit down when we have the opportunity to, I'll just call them preoperative consultations, like Nate said, whether they're elective or not. We start giving them things to think about, and they have more questions, and they're even going back and asking the surgeons other questions, like, oh, I didn't realize the length of my limb, or saving my knee was important, because this is a brand new topic for them. So that is just the beginning of the education process. But if you have questions that could affect outcomes of your surgery, which is not a far stretch, it's kind of more often than not. What happens in situations like this, and I've lost a limb, so I know what it's like. You know, you feel like your world's been turned upside down and you lose control. And it's, you know, the more you're making decisions and you feel like you're part of that process, it also helps to feel like you're still getting control of your life and some of what's going on. And a lot of it, when people go through losing a limb, or if it's elective because they've been dealing with pain or certain things, you know, being part of that decision-making process is so much a big part of that, how we got to there. So then when we get to the other part where we talk about acceptance, acceptance doesn't necessarily happen right away. It's something that might happen months down the line. So we just find that the more people are active and asking questions and part of the decision-making process, it's a lot easier for them to accept things or to find acceptance earlier on in the process. Which we talked about earlier, how mentally that's a struggle and a challenge, and all those. It's 2 years, it's a long journey, but it doesn't mean it's not functional right away, but there's a lot of different things that we adapt to during the process.
Exactly.
And one more question from Reddit. Their husband lost his big toe right below the first knuckle, and it was only a couple of months ago, and he's going back to work soon. And his wife is trying to find information on what he should wear in his shoe.
Okay.
And she said she can't really find anything on there. Just curious what you have.
So the last question that we had for tonight was someone asked about the loss of a big toe with, it sounds like part of the toe still intact, and he's going to be going back to work soon, and he's just wondering what he should put inside of his shoe or what he should do to kind of do that. I mean, number one is we're always going to kind of defer to, it's really important to talk to your doctor about these kinds of things. Because the reason for the amputation, the reason for the loss of that toe could have a lot to inform how you should kind of manage it. You know, if it was something where it was a trauma, it could be as simple as a small piece of foam inside of the shoe to kind of keep the toes in place, make sure everything feels balanced and everything. But if there is a vascular complication or something like that, then you're going to want to have something that's so much more custom and well fit, because you just don't want to have the potential for something to rub and cause a problem. But really so talking to the surgeon who performed the amputation or did the surgery, and then possibly even going into a prosthetics office and just asking, you know, what ideas they would have for solutions.
I mean,
that would be
if you have the opportunity to do both, I think it would be,
that's the thing.
Because what you really want to do, you know, the surgeon is going to have some ideas, but he might like the recommendation of a prosthetist as well, so he can look over that, or they can discuss it together.
Exactly.
It's oftentimes they'd say for a toe could be relatively simple because you can just take the insert out of the shoe and build something that's going to replace that with the toe filler like Nate was talking about. But if there's some balance complications,
Right.
you can have a carbon fiber
Right.
foot plate. So we don't want to advise you which one is best for you without seeing the patient, but that's where getting a prosthetist and a physician on the same page in your evaluation could be, provide the best outcome.
Okay. Well, we really appreciate everybody coming and participating in our
First Ask Me
Yeah,
Anything
absolutely.
process, and we sure will do it again at some point. So
and we'll put in another plug for all of the resources that are on our website, bremerprosthetics.com, and our YouTube channel, Bremer Prosthetics. We've got lots of content and videos, lots of information there that we try to keep updating as much as possible. And then also our step up clinics that will be coming back in September.
Yep.
Do we have what's the exact date on that?
September
12th.
It's on the website.
It's on the website. It's in my calendar here.
14th.
September 14th.
14th.
So we look forward to seeing anybody that's able to make it to that. We do a virtual format like this and have it kind of open with a question and answer in a similar fashion. So we appreciate everybody's time and thank you so much.
Enjoy your summer.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's why we're taking a break to enjoy summer, and we hope everybody has an active opportunities and expand and do new things while the weather's nice. So
right. Okay.
We'll see everyone in the fall.
Okay. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
All right. Thank you.